As always, first and foremost, it is very important to develop the right motivation and also the right perception. So with such, then we all should study and contemplate on the teaching given by Dogen Chogyal Pakpa to Chebik Demor, which is called the Garland of Jewels. So today, first it explains about the 6 perfections. And first, these 6 perfections abandons what kind of opposite. So the perfection of generosity abandons or destroy the stinginess. The perfection of moral conduct destroys the false moral conduct or destroys the false moral conduct. And the perfection of patience destroys the anger, and perfection of intellectualism destroys the laziness, and the perfection of concentration destroys the distraction, and the perfection of wisdom is the antidote of ignorance that does not know the actual meaning, that does not know the actual reality. Or in other words, the perfection of wisdom destroys the ignorance. So therefore, we can say the perfection of wisdom destroys all the faults, because all the faults arise from the ignorance. So ignorance is the root of all the faults. So when wisdom destroys the root, then it means it destroys all the other faults that comes from this root, which is the ignorance. And now, talking about the temporary benefits of these 6 perfections. So, the perfection of generosity is a cause of gaining wealth. The perfection of moral conduct will cause you to go to the higher realms, and the perfection of patience will cause us to gain good body or nice body, and the perfection of intellectualism or diligence will help us to increase our glorious, or increase, or it will fulfill our wishes. And the perfection of concentration will pacify the mental afflictions, and the perfection of wisdom will make us know about all the phenomena, or it enables us to know what is to be adopted and what is to be abandoned, so we can master on this kind of subject. And also it enables us to give explanation on these, and also anyway it makes us educated or knowledgeable or scholar on describing these things, and also it helps us to liberate from the obscurations. And now, how we can accumulate or how we can complete the 2 heaps through the practice of 6 perfections. So the first 5 perfections will increase the merit field. And these 5, if they are not sealed by the wisdom that realizes the selflessness, then it just becomes the cause of higher rebirth. And if these 5 are sealed by the wisdom, then it will become the cause of attaining the Rupakaya. And the 6th perfection is the perfection of wisdom. And this will accumulate all the wisdom heap. And by realizing the selflessness directly, then it helps us to gain liberation from the whole samsara, and also it is the cause of attaining the Dhammakaya. So next, it talks about the calm abiding and insight wisdom, or shamatha and vipassana. Here it just talked briefly on this, not in detail. So the 5th perfection, the perfection of concentration, is the shamatha, is the calm abiding. And the 6th perfection, the perfection of wisdom, is the insight wisdom. The perfection of concentration abandons the distraction and makes us abide in calm, make our mind to abide in calmness. And then the perfection of wisdom analyze it, and it can see more than what calm abiding mind can see. In other words, it can see the Dhamma Dhatu, or it can see the ultimate truth or the ultimate reality directly. So therefore it is called the insight wisdom. And first, the calm abiding meditation can pacify the visible afflictive emotions, or the gross part of the afflictive emotions, or in other words, it can control the afflictive emotions. And also it enables us to gain many samadhis and other qualities. And then the insight wisdom enables us to eradicate or to eliminate the mental afflictions such as anger, attachment, etc. And also it enables us to know all the phenomena, including their nature or their ultimate reality. And also it enables us to gain the non-conceptual wisdom of noble beings. And the second perfection, the perfection of moral conduct, is the base of both calm abiding and insight wisdom. To have the practice of the calm abiding and insight wisdom, we must have the moral conduct. Without this moral conduct, we cannot have genuine or pure, calm abiding and insight wisdom. And then the remaining three, the perfection of generosity and patience and intellectualism or diligence, these three are the conducive condition to accomplish the shamatha and vipassana, or calm abiding and the insight wisdom. Now it says, if the relative mind, or the mind of the relative truth, or relative mind, if relative mind analyze each and every part of these perfections, then one will understand that each of these perfections has all the six perfections. For example, like the practice of giving, actually it's the first perfection, the perfection of generosity. And at that time, if one does not have stinginess, and if one does not have other negative actions or thoughts, or even abandons the stinginess and negative actions or harmful actions towards others at that time, then that itself is the practice of second perfection, the perfection of moral conduct. And at that time, if the receiver, if they still use unpleasant speech, or if they still criticize the giver, then at that time, if the giver practice the tolerance, or if giver practice the patience, then that itself is the practice of patience at the time of giving the things to the receiver. And at the time of giving, one is doing the virtuous deeds of giving to others with great joy, with diligence and with great joy, and that itself is the perfection of intellectualism or the diligence. And at that time, one is paying attention on the action of giving without any distraction, and that itself is the perfection of concentration. And at that time, if the giving is sealed by the non-conceptual wisdom that does not cling or focus on the three rounds or the three spheres, which are the giver, the gift, and the receiver. These three are called the three rounds or three spheres. So anyway, if one gives with the wisdom, without thinking of these three rounds or three spheres, then it is the perfection of wisdom. So similarly, the other five can also have all the six perfections in each of them. So one perfection can consist of all the six perfections. So whether one perfection can have all the others or not depend on ourselves, depend on practitioners, because it depends how we practice. If we practice in this way, then we can have all the six perfections at the time of practicing the perfection of generosity. And similarly, in such way, if we practice the other 5 perfections, then at that time also we can have all the 6 perfections at the time of doing each and every perfections, at the time of practicing the each and every perfections. And then also these perfections, each of them, or each of these perfections has 2 aspects. The aspect of merit heap and the aspect of wisdom heap. The appearance part is the merit heap. The emptiness part, or the reality part, is the wisdom heap. So the appearance part is the merit heap. The emptiness part, or the reality part, is the wisdom heap. So each of these 6 perfections not only has all the 6 perfections, but also each of them has the 2 heaps, the heaps of merit and the wisdom. So if the other 5, the first 5, if they are sealed by the perfection of wisdom, then they are also linked with the wisdom heap. So the prince should know that each of these perfections has the 6 perfections, and so prince should know this and should get used to it, should familiarize with it, and then also each of them has the 2 heaps, the merit and wisdom heap. So prince should know this and make it familiar with this. So those who know and who can practice in such a way, then for them attaining the enlightenment state is not far. They can attain the enlightenment state in a short time or in a quick time. So not only to the prince, we should think that Chögyam Papa is giving all this advice to all of us at the moment in this 21st century, to all of us. So when we practice, we should practice in a such way. When we practice the like giving, we should practice without any condition, and we should practice with moral conduct, with other perfections, without having the intention to gain fame or name or power or higher post or anything like that. All these are mundane things. All these are worldly things which are not the actual Dharma, which are not the real Dharma. So we should not mix the worldly thoughts, the worldly things with the Dharma practice. If we mix these 2 together, then it won't be effective. For example, eating food or taking medicine is good for us when we need these things. When we are hungry, we need to take food, and when we are sick, we need to take medicines. So if we take food and medicine at the right time, then it's good for us. But if we mix these with the poison, then food is not eatable, and also medicine is not a real medicine. It's no more a real medicine. It is already mixed with poison. So this kind of medicine which is mixed with the poison will not cure our own sickness. Instead, it can cause us more and more pain and suffering. And it can even cause our own dear life, or it can take our own dear life. So taking food and medicine at the right time is beneficial for us. But if we mix this with the poison, then it's not beneficial. Instead, it's harmful to us. Similarly, so the Dharma practice is like taking food or medicine at the right time. And worldly thoughts is like a poison. So if we mix worldly thoughts with the Dharma practice, then it's like mixing poison with the food or medicine. So that kind of Dharma practice, which is mixed with the worldly thoughts, will not be beneficial to us. Of course, it won't be beneficial to us. Instead, it can harm us. Doing practice with wrong motivation or with worldly motivation. So worldly motivation is also a wrong motivation. So practicing Dharma with wrong or worldly motivation will not be beneficial. Instead, it will be harmful. So Jesu Rinpoche Thakpa Gyaltsen said in his song on departing from the four attachment, keeping the moral conduct and listening and contemplating and meditating on Dharma with right intention is the seed of gaining liberation and enlightenment state. And doing all this with wrong intention or with worldly intention, then all these becomes like the seed of falling down in the lower realms. So practicing Dharma with wrong intention, with worldly intention, then it is not right. So therefore, when we practice these perfections, we should practice according to the teaching, just like here. In every perfection, we should have all the other perfections, and in every practice of these perfections, we should have the two heaps, the merit heap and the wisdom heap. Actually, these perfections are known as perfections not just because of the physical action. Actually, it is called the perfection mainly because of the mental action, mainly because of the perfection of wisdom, mainly because of the genuine perfection of wisdom. When we have the genuine perfection of wisdom, because of this, then other five practices are called the perfection of generosity, etc. So these perfections should, these practices should come mainly from the mind, mainly from the wisdom, mainly from the right intention, right motivation and wisdom. Without right motivation and wisdom, it is impossible for us to practice the real perfection of generosity or other perfections. We can do like the reflection of perfection practice, like look alike perfection, but not the real perfection. If we don't have the right motivation and right wisdom, then we cannot do the real perfection practice. We can do a look-alike or a superficial practice of perfections. So it is important for us to know these points or these meanings so that we can improve ourselves and we can make ourselves a better person, a better spiritual person, and a better spiritual practitioner. There is always a room for us to improve. If we think, I don't need to improve anymore, then it is not right. We as an ordinary human being, there's a lot of room for us to improve. So we should try to improve. And when we think we need to improve a lot, we think we have many faults and we need to correct these faults, or we should try to pacify these faults and we need to improve more, then with such thinking, it helps us to reduce our pride or arrogance of becoming Buddhist for so many years, or arrogant of receiving so many teachings, or arrogant of practicing Dharma for so many years, etc. No matter how many years that we have practiced, or we have teachings, or we have done our sadhanas without any break, still we should not have arrogance, still we should not have pride, still we should think we are ordinary human being, we are general person or ordinary person. So with such thinking, it can help us to make ourselves down-to-earth person, or low-profile person, or humble person. Those person who has great arrogance, they are not considered as a good person. In the worldly term also, or from the worldly point of view also, those who have lots of arrogance, they are not considered as a good person. Those who are humble, down to earth, they are considered as a good person. So from the worldly point of view, as well as from the dharmic point of view, controlling the arrogant, controlling the pride is considered as a good person. So we should always try to be a good person, and if we really try to become a good person, then we should think arrogant is the opposite of making ourselves a good person. Arrogance is always the obstacle for us to become a good person. So with such thinking, we should try the arrogance or the pride to reduce or to control. We should try to control these, and we should let it go. Now, next is the practice of the four means of attracting disciples. The four means of attracting disciples are: the first one is giving, and second is speaking pleasantly, and third one is the meaningful conduct, and fourth one is the consistency between words and deeds. So, to ripen others, we need to practice the four means of attracting disciples. Or sometimes in English says, I think, the four means of gathering. So, the giving, the first one is giving. So the giving, by giving, it can accumulate the merit heap, and also temporarily it can place them on a temporary happiness. It can place the others on the state of temporary happiness. And second is speaking pleasantly, or using pleasant speech. By this, through this way, one can explain these six perfections unmistakably, properly. So, with a pleasant speech, or by speaking pleasantly, one can explain these 6 perfections, and then give other Dharma teachings. And then the third one is meaningful conduct, which means making others to not only to listen to these teachings, but also making them to practice these teachings after they understand the meaning or after they know how to practice. And then the fourth one is consistency between words and deeds, which means not only we talk about this, not only we make others to practice these teachings or these perfections, but also we ourselves practice these perfections. If we just talk and if we just let others to practice without practicing ourselves, then it is not right. So we need to show the example by ourselves. So not only we explain them and let them practice, but also we ourselves need to practice these teachings, these perfections and Dharma teachings. So these 4 are called the 4 means of attracting disciples, or the 4 means of gathering. So by practicing ourselves, it encourages them. It can have great influence to others to practice more and more Dharma. Now the next one, it says the practice of generosity or giving. Through this, one can gather the followers through material means, and by using pleasant speech and the meaningful conduct and the consistency between words and deeds, by practicing the remaining 3, it gathers the followers through the Dharma, through the teachings or through the Dharma. And also we can say the first one, the giving, can benefit this life by giving others material things, can benefit their present lives, and by using pleasant speech or by practicing the 3 remaining ones for others. Through these, it can help others to gain liberation from the 3 lower realms and also from the whole samsara. So, therefore, all the actions for others can be combined into these 4 practices, the practices of the 4 means of attracting the disciples. So these 4 practices are very important. Normally we say, in order to ripen ourselves, we need to practice these 6 perfections, and in order to ripen others, we need to practice the 4 means of attracting disciples or the 4 means of gathering. And now the next one is about the ultimate bodhicitta. So by accumulating the merit and wisdom heap, and even though we put lots of effort to fulfill the purpose of self and others, when we put effort to fulfill the purpose of self and others, and at that time we also need to know that they are devoid of self nature, they are devoid of truly existent. By knowing this and without having any clinging thoughts or without having any attachments, one should practice these 6 perfections. And also, during the meditative session, one should get used to the non-conceptual wisdom without having any clinging thoughts. So through this, then gradually, according to the Paramitayana tradition or the general Mahayana tradition, then gradually we can see the ultimate truth. We can see the ultimate truth directly without any hesitation or doubt. So this wisdom that sees the ultimate reality directly is called the path of seeing. Then after that, when we progress on the path, then gradually we can gain the other bhumis like second and third. Actually, the path of seeing itself is the fourth bhumi. Then later, by continuing this practice, then we can gain second, third, fourth, etc. And from second to 10th bhumi, these 9 bhumis are the path of meditation. So, or the part of meditation or the part of cultivation. Now, Chögyam Pagpa explains about the path. Actually, there are 5 paths. The path of accumulation, the path of joining, or the path of application, but I think anyway it means the path of joining. And third one is part of seeing, then fourth one is the part of cultivation, and the fifth one is the part of complete accomplishment. So first, the part of accumulation. What is the accumulation? What is the part of accumulation? What is the meaning of part of accumulation? So part of accumulation means a part of liberation, which is a part of which a part which is I don't know how to say. Anyway, part of liberation, which is also the cause of gaining or attaining the path of joining itself is the cause of, or is the part of gaining the liberation, and also is the cause of gaining the next part, the path of joining. For example, it is like a big chariot, and in ancient time there's no cars. In ancient time there's chariots. So chariot that has the 2 wheels and the the axle of the wheel, or the main part of the chariot, then the actual body of the chariot, and if it is pulled by a one horse, then this chariot cannot move fast because it is pulled by only one horse. If it is pulled by 2 horses, the same chariot pulled by 2 horses, then it's faster. And if it's pulled by 3 horses, then it's even more faster. And if it is pulled by three horses and like the elephant or other, then it can become even more faster. And if it is pulled by two elephants, then it becomes five. There are five animals that pulls the chariot, so then it becomes even more faster. So similarly, here in the meaning, the two hips are like the two wheels that can help us to reach the destination. Without the two hips, we cannot reach our goal, or we cannot reach the destination, or we cannot attain our realizations. So in the meaning, the two hips, the merit hip and the wisdom hip, are like the two wheels. And then in order to abandon, or in order to make the antidotes or the remedies more stronger, and in order to progress on the path, we need skillful means such as the great compassion, the bodhicitta, and altruistic thought or mind. Actually, it's none other than bodhicitta. Or sometimes we can also say it in a different ways, or we can say it in a separate ways. And also dedicating the merits to attain Buddhahood for the sake of all the sentient, etc. So these skillful means are like the axle of the wheel, or like the main part of the wheel. And then, actually, the axle of the wheel or main part of the wheel means in the chariot there's one kind of beam, long beam in the middle, so it's like that. And so without this kind of axle of the wheel, or this main part of the chariot, without this, one does not have the power to go to the liberation, to go to the city of liberation. And the vows, the Patimoksha vow and Bodhicitta vows, these are like the body of the chariot. These are the foundation of the path. Then, the path of accumulation itself can be divided into three parts or three kinds, known as smaller part of accumulation, intermediate part of accumulation, and the greater part of accumulation. So, in the smaller part of accumulation, one practices the four close application of mindfulness. Actually, this is part of the 37 factors conducive to awakening. And then in the intermediate part of accumulation, one practices the four right abandonments. So, in the smaller part of accumulation, one practices the four close application of mindfulness. Then at that time, it is like pulling the chariot with one horse. And in the middle state of part of accumulation, one practice on top of the four close application of mindfulness, one also practice the four right abandonments. So then it's like pulling the chariot with two horses is faster then in the greater part of accumulation, one on top of the first two, like the 4 close application of mindfulness and the 4 right abandonment. On top of these two, one also practices the 4 basis of miraculous power. Then it is more faster. It's like pulling the chariot with 3 horses. Then the aspiration or prayer or aspiration is like controlling the chariot. Or something like that. And then faith is like removing the pains of the path, or removing the faults of the path or the pains of the path, etc. So by getting all this, then one meditates and enter into the path of accumulation. So this is the path of accumulation. And then in the second main part, which is the part with joining, and as explained before, one enters into the path of accumulation, and then later one practices the 5 powers. Actually, the path of joining also has 4 kinds, and they are known as the 4 levels of the path of joining. First one is heat, second is known as peak, P-E-A-K, peak, and third one is forbearance, and fourth one is the supreme worldly dharma. So out of these 4, when one is in the first 2, the heat and peak, during this time one also practices the 5 faculties. These faculties means not the normal faculties. These are like this faith and enthusiasm or the diligence, mindfulness, samadhi and wisdom. These 5 are known as the 5 faculties, which are also the part of 37 factors conducive of awakening. So in these 2, on the peak and the heat and the peak, in these 2, one practices the 5 powers. So at that time it is like elephant. And then the next 2, in the forbearance and the supreme worldly dharma, in these 2, one also practices the 5 powers. Actually, 5 faculties and 5 powers, what are the 5? They are same. 5 powers are also the faith and enthusiasm, mindfulness, samadhi, and wisdom. They are same, but in the 5 powers, they are more powerful than the ones that are in the 5 faculties. So in the forbearance and the supreme worldly dharma, in these 2 parts, one practices the 5 powers. So then it becomes more powerful. and it becomes more powerful to destroy the opposite factors. So part of joining means it's a part of gaining liberation, and also it rises from the part of accumulation, and it is the cause of attaining the part of seeing. And it helps us to develop the part of seeing. So therefore, we can say this is the cause of gaining the realizations of three yanas. So thus, in the part of joining, there are four kinds. In the first two, in the heat and peak, one practices the five faculties. Then at that time, it's like a chariot pulled by one elephant. I think like 3 horses and 1 elephant, like that. And in the forbearance and the supreme worldly dharma, in these two, one also practices the 5 powers. So at that time, it's like on top of these, then there's another elephant to pull. So it's more powerful and it's more faster to gain the liberation. So why it is called the part of joining? Because this part joins us to reach the part of seeing. So therefore, it's called the part of joining. Anyway, from the smaller part of accumulation up to the supreme worldly dharma, it goes up. The qualities increases, the negatives or the opposite factors reduces, like this. So through this way, one progresses on the path step by step. And now next one is the part of seeing. So by entering and by going on the by practicing the Dharma on the first 2 parts, the part of accumulation and the part of joining. So through this, one can gain the part of seeing and can eliminate all the obscuration of the mental afflictions. And it is called the part of seeing because before that, one have never seen the ultimate truth, or one have never seen the reality directly. At the moment, we as an ordinary human being, we can only imagine and we can only visualize of seeing the reality or seeing the ultimate truth, but we cannot see it directly. We cannot see it directly by ourselves. So the first moment of seeing the ultimate truth directly is called the part of seeing. The moment we see the ultimate truth directly is the moment that we gain the part of seeing, and it is the moment that we gain the noble wisdom, and it is the moment that we become the noble bodhisattva, and it is the moment that we gain the first bhumi, and it is the moment that we gain the liberation from the whole samsara, and it is the moment that we abandon all the oscillation of mental afflictions according to the general Mahayana or according to the Paramedayana tradition. So at the moment we are talking according to the Paramedayana tradition. So according to this, then it is the moment that we can abandon all the obscuration of mental afflictions. And at that time, one can practice the 7 limbs of awakening, the 7 limbs of awakening. And next is the part of cultivation, or sometimes it says part of meditation. So the part of meditation or the part of cultivation is like traveling on the ocean by boat or by ferry. So when the ferry goes on the ocean, at that time, in ancient time, the boats have the 4 kind of what we call sailor or the banner at the 4 directions, and also there are 4 big stones or like the boulder or the stones at the 4 corners. So these 4 kind of banner or sailor help us to move forward with the wind, and these 4 big stones help us to calm or help us not to move strongly by the waves of the ocean. So we need these 8, the 4 banners or the sailor or whatever you call it, these cloths, and 4 stones. So with these 8, it helps the boat to go smoothly on the surface of the ocean. And it helps us to reach like the jewel land, and one can control the jewel or one can take the jewel. So similarly, those who have already seen the ultimate reality directly, then it means they are now already in the part of cultivation or meditation, and part of progressing on the part of meditation or the cultivation is like going on the boat. Just like boat needs 8 things to go smooth on the ocean, similarly, to move forward, to progress on the path, we need the 8 fold Arya paths, the 8-fold Arya paths. So through this, we can move forward on the ocean of the noble path, and also we won't be disturbed, we won't be hindered by the waves of obscurations, the waves of obscurations or the waves of mental affliction. These waves will not disturb ourselves. So therefore, the Bodhisattvas move forward on the path in such way, and then they will get blessings from the Buddhas of 3 times, and progress on the ocean, and then finally we'll reach the destination of Buddhahood, or attaining the Buddhahood. And one can abandon all the obscuration that needs to be abandoned by the path of cultivation, and one can gain many high qualities. Now the next one is the part of complete accomplishment, the fifth part. There are 5 parts. The first one is part of accumulation, second is the part of joining, third is part of seeing, fourth part of the part of cultivation, the fifth one is called the part of complete accomplishment, or the part of no more learning, and this refers to the state of Buddhahood. So, progressing on the worldly part, the part of accumulation and the part of joining, is like traveling by chariot on the road, on earth. Then on earth pulled by 1 horse, 2 horse, 3 horse, like that. And then progressing on the noble part, or the part of seeing and the part of cultivation, is like progressing or traveling on the ocean by boat. And then finally one can reach the final destination, or one can attain the ultimate, one can gain the ultimate result, or one can attain the Buddhahood, complete Buddhahood, or the perfect Buddhahood. And at that time one can fulfill all the wishes of others, self and others. Why it is called the part of complete accomplishment? Because there's no other accomplishment, there's no other things to accomplish. There's no other things to accomplish more than this. So it's the final one, it's the ultimate accomplishment, so it's called the complete accomplishment. And also it abandons, or it pacifies all the obscurations completely, and also one gains all the ultimate results. So therefore it is called the part of a complete accomplishment. So we can say so we should know that there are 5 parts. In the part of accumulation there are 3 different kinds. A smaller part of accomplishment, the intermediate part of accomplishment, and the greater part of accomplishment. So in these 3, one practices the 4 close applications of mindfulness, and the 4 right abandonments, and the 4 basis of miraculous power. And then the part of joining also has 4, the heat, peak, forbearance, and supreme worldly dharma. And in the first 2, one practices the 5 faculties, and in the next 2, one practices the 5 powers. Then in the part of seeing, one practices the 7 limbs of awakening, and in the part of cultivation, one practices the 8-fold Aya path. So in this way, from the smaller part of accomplishment up to the part of cultivation, one practices all the 37 factors conducive of awakening. So 37 means the 4 close application of mindfulness, and 4 right abandonments, and the 4 bases of miraculous power. So 4 trees are 12. And then on top of 12, there are 5 faculties and the 5 powers, then becomes 22. And on top of 22, then we add the 7 limbs of awakening. So 22 plus 7 is 29. And then on top of this, we add the 8-fold Arya path. Then adding 8 on 29 becomes 37. So these are the 37 conducive of awakening. And through this, then finally one reaches the final destination, or one attains the Buddhahood, or one gains the path of a complete accomplishment, or the path of normal learning. Now the next one, it explains about the bhumis. General explanation on the bhumis, and the specific explanations on the bhumis. First, the general one. Bhumi, here the bhumi, actually bhumi is earth. So here, as the great Acharya Chandrakirti said, the bhumi, the definition of the bhumi is the base of qualities. The base of quality is the bhumi, is the meaning of bhumi. And the base also has, this bhumi also has 2, the mundane bhumi and super mundane bhumi, or the worldly bhumi and beyond worldly bhumi. And mundane bhumi or the worldly bhumi refers to the path of accumulation and the path of joining. And super mundane bhumi or the beyond worldly bhumi also has 2, the path of learning and the path of normal learning. Path of learning refers to the path of seeing and path of cultivation, and path of normal learning refers to the state of Buddhahood. And part of learning of the beyond worldly bhumi has the 10 bhumi, classification of 10 bhumi. Actually, all those who are on the bhumis, they all have the noble wisdom. They all are noble bodhisattvas, but they have different qualities. And like first bhumi has more obscuration than the second bhumi, and second bhumi has more obscuration than third bhumi, etc. And like third bhumi has more qualities than second bhumi has more qualities than first, like this. So there are differences in their qualities and their abandonments and their realizations. And also they emphasize differently. They emphasize on different practices of perfections, like first bhumi emphasize more on the perfection of generosity, etc. So through this way, there are 10 classifications, or there are 10 bhumis. So with this, I will conclude my today's session. And at the end, we should always dedicate all our merits to attain Buddhahood for the sake of all the sentient beings, and especially we should dedicate all our merits for our root gurus, long life, good health, and turn the wheel of Dharma far and wide always. Thank you.